Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I am Sophie Jaffe.
And Noah is here again with us today.
Yes, she is.
She would say hello, but she's eating.
Mouth is full.
That's not polite.
Yep.
It is not polite to eat with your mouth full. I remember the summer I learned that.
She's a princess already, so she's very polite.
Yeah.
She knows her etiquette. For
sure. For sure. And today we're going to talk about sex.
Talk about sex, baby.
Cool. I like that you're the one that pulled out that line instead of me, because I would feel lame if I did. Being that
Talk about you and me.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk a little bit about our own sexual preferences, just to kind of break the ice for a lot of people later on. But we have Brianna here today for the interview from a very juicy app called Juicebox. And first of all, I love the name. I told her this during the interview, but it's a cool app that pairs people with sex coaches, literally people who can help you figure out answers about sex. And we all know that this is one of those topics that is actually really, really hard to talk about. And so they solve that problem to some extent. You know, I talk a lot about shame. Obviously, sex is one of those topics a lot of people have shame about. And so the idea of being able to link up with a sex coach that knows what they're talking about, but yet isn't right here in the room with you, so you can be a little less embarrassed when you ask them questions, I think that's brilliant.
It's dope. I think it is going to help a lot of people, and it already has. And I hope that it inspires you guys to explore and experiment with that. Oh, Noah.
Noah is agreeing with us. She's when Noah coughs, that means yes.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do for this episode.
But yeah, it's a pretty dope app. Definitely go check it out. And you're going to get a free little gift with this podcast.
Yeah, I think they're giving people, I think it's like 5 days
trial
they get a trial for the app anyway, but I think you get 5 days of actual coaching free or something along those lines. So that's really, really cool. And, you know, we talked to her a lot about some of the most common questions that they get and some of the issues that come up for them most commonly, or some of the trickiest, some of the most maybe surprising facts. So I think that'll be really exciting for a lot of people listening in terms of actual, you know, tips, actual things that they can use on the ground to help them, you know, with their own sexuality, whether you have a partner or not, and figuring that out. And so I think that's, to me, the power of this episode, is because I know, you know, Sophie, when you and I would have couples workshops, if we ever ask a couple if they've talked to one another about what they actually like, right, something like 80 to 90% of people say, no, we've never talked about it. And
the crazy thing is, most of the couples we work with are married. So they've been together at least together for a long time, even if not married. Not married isn't the point here. It's the fact that they've been together for several years, sometimes a decade, and they've never had that conversation. Yeah. It's crazy.
I think that's the most common answer, is that no, we've never actually talked about it.
Had that conversation, yeah.
Yeah, so that's really interesting to me, you know, especially because I think a lot of people connect initially, not everybody, but a lot of people connect initially because they're attracted to one another, right, or there's a sexual charge or something along those lines. Right. That's kind of the thing people go for first. I mean, apps like Tinder or Bumble or things like that are kind of made for that, right? The attraction. Right. And yet we just kind of expect the sexuality piece to work itself out.
Yeah, and I think it's really important both if you're in a relationship, but also if you're not. If you're not in a relationship yet and you're just starting to date, even more important, I think, or at least as important, to have these conversations from the start. With someone you just start dating. It's so important to just set that foundation, just like you want to talk about other things that matter to you, other really important foundational things.
Yeah, why do you think it's so hard for people to talk about it?
I think you said it in the beginning, just there's a lot of stigma. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of, I think our society doesn't really go about it in a very open way. I think it's much more like a Hollywood, sexuality is like this Hollywood idea. Yes, from porn, but even if, I mean, a lot of people have never seen a porn in their lives. It's not even that. It's like, it's almost like hush hush in certain ways. And then.
But I guess I'm asking why. Like everybody has sex. So when around drugs and alcohol, most people have for sure never touched cocaine. That is a fact. Most people in society have never touched cocaine. So if you touch cocaine, you're this small group of people.
Okay.
But everybody has sex.
Why is it so hard?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, why is it so not so hard? Why is it so shaming to talk about it?
Shaming, yeah. Hard to talk about. I think it's what you're used to. Like it's what you grow up talking about. If your parents never talked to you about sex and then you never talk to your friends about sex, like you're programmed in a different way. And most of us aren't talking about sex. Like the only quote unquote sex talks I had in middle school, high school growing up was in my 11th grade health class for like 2 weeks. We had a sex ed portion and it wasn't really about sex. It was more about like the female organs, the male organs. Yeah. It wasn't really about sex exactly. So you're misinformed. You're uneducated, most of us. And there's a lot of shame surrounding it because you never talk about it. So you're just not comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I think even right before we started this episode, I was asking you, because I think these things change too, what you like. And we didn't get to what you don't like. But I think that's interesting because I know for me, and maybe we can, if you're comfortable about it, we can kind of give one or two of the answers that you gave before. But not only have my preferences changed, but I know for sure because of some of the stuff we've gone through that I've started mistrusting some of the things I used to like before. Mm-hmm. Right. So like I was into more like bondage and stuff like that earlier in my life. Mm-hmm. But it gets dirtied up in shame around misdeeds or around other pseudo-traumatic events, like things that happened in our relationship that created sexual mistrust, made me start questioning what I like. And then it takes a lot of work to break through that wall of shame, even to try to figure out what it is you really like, because the shame almost supersedes all of it.
And it's confusing. It's confusing, I'm sure, for you, because you had these experiences and there was a lot of lying and hiding and shameful feelings. And then I found out about a lot of it and I wasn't a part of that world. And now we're in a relationship. So it's kind of hard. You're kind of tiptoeing around all of it, being careful, not as to not like ruffle feathers and make me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, or break trust again and all those things.
Exactly. Yeah, fall down kind of like a spiral.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if for some people listening, there have been moments like that in their life where they figured out that they like something, but then for whatever reason that didn't fit into the partner they were with, the environment they grew up in, the religion they came from.
Well, it's true. It's like, just as you asked me just before this episode what I like, it hasn't really changed that much, but we haven't also been like experimenting because I've been pregnant for 10 months and just not highly sexual. And, you know, it does change. It changes depending, minus the shame period, like the shame portion. It changes, your sexuality changes based on your partner. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you've never done bondage with me because I've never really been into it. I've never done that. I've never really actually been intrigued by it at all. That doesn't mean I won't ever be intrigued by it, but I think a lot of why you're not into it is because it's not something that's attractive to me.
Sure, you're not bringing that to the relationship.
If I was curious, I'm sure we would be doing it, but I'm not like, there's just not any part of me, and you can feel that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a portion too. So give yourself some credit in that respect. You know, it's not
makes sense.
All shame and like that you did this thing and you're trying to keep it away. Like we experiment in lots of ways. We're very, very open to like trying new things, but that specific type of example is just not one that I've necessarily been like interested in yet.
Yeah. I think one of the first times we talked about it openly, or not openly, but we had like conversations about it was, if you remember Fashion Mamas, we went to that event around like the 50 Shades movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because you read the book first, and I think that I think those books opened up the BDSM world
Sure.
for a lot of women, like millions and millions of women.
Definitely.
But we went to the movie.
It made it mainstream.
Well, it made it at least approachable to the mainstream for sure, and like
Approachable.
something that the mainstream can talk about.
Right.
And we went to that movie, and it was mostly women when we went because the whole group was women, and so we ended up talking about it before and after.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is that cross of kind of shame versus not, right? Like if I don't know if it's I'm just kind of making a comparison. I don't know if this makes sense, but if I like an article of clothing that I don't know if you're into, I don't have a problem asking you about it.
Right.
There's something more
It's charged.
to this. Yeah.
Sexuality's charged.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Anyway.
And there's a lot wrapped up into it too. There's like confidence and performance, and there's a lot more to it. You wearing a certain shirt or not and a certain color or not isn't like saying the type of person you are and like if you're good or bad.
Sure. I mean,
or average.
It can be, right? Like I'm wearing a pink shirt today, and for some people that would be strange or whatever, especially a while ago. But yes, not in the same way. Definitely not in the same way. And so again, I think that's why when we got into this conversation with Brianna, I think that was to me the really exciting part, is to give people a method, an avenue, a way to
talk about this stuff openly.
Well, to talk about it openly with a professional.
With an expert.
And
I think that's another thing, is it's not really, yes, the shame, but never mind the shame. It's just not really that accessible. Like sex therapists are expensive. Sex coaches are expensive.
Expensive, hard to find a good one, hard to schedule this stuff.
Sure.
All this stuff, right? And
like
so
if you live in middle America, there's probably not a lot of sex coaches around there. Like just guessing.
And just the topics that she had mentioned, right? Erectile dysfunction, guys asking about how to like be better around oral sex with women asking what to do.
Orgasms.
Women. I mean, she talked about some scary stats, like something like 60% of women hadn't orgasmed in general in the public. And so helping women figure that out, I mean, I think it's kind of crazy given everything that you and I have gone through over the years and all the education and all the therapy and all the work we've done and where we both came from before, for me to think about realities like that. But thank God there's a solution out there. Thank God there's a way for people to seek help that is given in a really non-judgmental way from professionals. That's really, really cool.
Absolutely.
And there's some other really cool topics that we ended up touching here.
I think the most important thing, like with relating to sexuality, is just that it's always like staying open always, and always wanting to learn more and staying curious. I think that's like a really important thing in sexuality, because you don't want to get bored. You don't want things to become stale. And the way that happens is by constantly just being open.
Yeah. And I think that's really hard for people.
Yeah.
Because we're taught, I think maybe this is a big point, is we're taught what right sex is. And, that fits some people some of the time, but definitely not everybody all the time.
Absolutely.
And if you're married to somebody for 60, 70 years, it's going to be hard to only have sex like that for the entire 70 years and not get bored.
Totally.
I think that's an important point. Our relationship tip.
Oh yeah.
This week.
Goes along the lines of what we were just talking about.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty simple. Ask the question. I think the relationship tip for this week is, whether you're by yourself or if you have a partner
or if you're dating,
have the conversation.
Yep.
Talk to the other person. What do you like in bed? What turns you on? What turns you off?
You can even ask it while you're in bed. You can sit down and have a conversation outside of the bedroom, or you can do it while you're in the bedroom. Like, do you like that? How's that feel? Do you want more? Do you want less? Like, have a conversation. Yeah,
I think that's a relationship tip. You're going to see a lot in the conversation with Brianna, just how important and unexplored these topics are for so many people. But challenge yourself. Ignited is all about challenging yourself and moving forward in a way that creates a better life for you. We're all sexual beings. Take on this challenge. Figure out what you love, what you like, what turns you on, and what turns on your partner.
For sure.
Cool.
Stay open. Stay curious.
And speaking of staying open, keep your ears open for this little midsection here, and we will see you on the other side. Don't forget our relationship workshop is now live and automated. We will put a link in this. If you're struggling about how to talk about topics exactly like this in your relationship, you got to sign up for this thing. I mean, for the price of like a half a therapy session, you get lifetime access to hours of Sophie and I helping you work through these things in detail with exercises available whenever you wanted to. You don't got to schedule anything. You don't have to drive to anybody's office on your time.
Yep.
Really, really cool.
Check it out.
See you on the other side.
Bye. This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fix all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the second portion, the interview part of the Ignited podcast. We have got the founder of Juicebox, an app focused on sexual coaching and relationship coaching, which, we absolutely know will speak to you, Brianna Rader. Brianna, we talked a little bit beforehand about the app and what it does, but maybe just start us off a little bit with what Juicebox is about. I love the name, by the way. What Juicebox is about. We'll start there and we'll dive in deeper.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Juicebox is in the App Store for iPhones. It's completely free to download, and we connect people one-on-one with sex, dating, and relationship coaches anonymously. So we're here to help you with erectile issues, women that have never had an orgasm before, or people that are in couples, marriages that are having relationship arguments or struggling in the bedroom. Even people that are single and struggling with dating, like that whole umbrella of topics. And it also, you don't have to be in some sort of crisis mode. We also help people that are in pretty good relationships and have great sex lives, and they just want to take it to the next level, maybe learn a new skill. And that's where our coaches come in.
Very cool. And you gave some specific examples. I'm assuming those are examples that literally come from participants you've had on the app right now and some of the issues they're struggling with.
Yeah, that's correct. Those are the issues I named are some of our more common topics that come up.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So I have one really big initial question. How did you think about this? What brought this on?
Yeah. Well, my context growing up is that I am from Tennessee, and in Tennessee, it's more conservative. So I didn't receive any sort of like comprehensive sex ed. And so that was kind of my background. And then when I stayed in Tennessee for college, there also wasn't very much sex education or relationship well-being kind of classes or programs. So I started a local organization to provide this programming to college students in the state of Tennessee. And that was my first experience in the field. And it was very controversial given the political environment. And the state actually got involved and defunded my organization and passed a resolution legally condemning the organization and myself. And it was kind of like all over the news. I was on the Bill O'Reilly show. And that's kind of when I realized, wow, this topic is really scary for a lot of people. And people really, really need help with this. And so anyway, that was my first experience.
Brianna, you're our first, so are you officially sanctioned in Tennessee?
Yeah, it's called a condemnation.
Wow, we haven't had a condemned person on the show yet. This is great. Welcome.
Thank you.
You'll fit in just well. Just great.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, that's a really interesting, like, a lot of kids, a lot of teens don't get robust sex ed.
Right.
Not everybody responds by starting a state-run organization to help others deal with it. What drove you to that?
Well, I think I was getting kind of fed up in college seeing like really, really smart women not know how to find birth control, or seeing people like feeling lost and alone navigating these topics. And I feel like I heard about some more like private liberal universities having programming. I thought, well, why can't we have that here in Tennessee?
Yeah.
And so that's what initiated my first work in the space. But I've always been very, very passionate about these topics because a lot of people feel lost and alone, and there's so few resources that speak frankly and honestly about these topics.
So the app is free. And then for the coaching, how does it work? Is there like plans you can get? Can you do a one-off coaching?
Yeah, so we try to make it super flexible. We're able to give all of your listeners a 5-day free trial. And then from that point on, it's only $24 per week. So that's much, much cheaper than the like $200 per hour rates that a lot of people have to pay for in-person meetings. So one of our huge goals is making this accessible. So it's on your phone. You can access it 7 days a week, and we always get back to you within 24 hours.
That's great.
I love that. That's really, really great. And yeah, I mean, not just, it sounds like the idea for something like this came up for you around college, and obviously college is a very sexually active and yet, naive and loaded sort of environment, because people bring whatever they have beforehand. So whatever education or lack thereof they got earlier in life, and they bring that to their relationships in an environment like college, which, just can exacerbate some of the underlying issues. You were talking about women who are ill-informed about birth control, but then, other issues, right? Like not knowing how to say no, or whether it's okay to say no, or not understanding, I assume actually a whole host of boundary related issues and things of that nature.
Right. I mean, so from a very young age, we're all told, sex can be dangerous or sex can be dirty. And then we're not allowed to talk about it at school or at work or with our families. And we're never really formally taught how to navigate sex and dating and relationships, where other life skills were taught. And then suddenly we're adults and we're expected to be amazing in bed and amazing at relationships. And then we're not. And so then we feel shame around that. And then on top of that, we're forced to learn via trial and error. And that leads to bad experiences at the minimum, but also can be traumatic.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I mean, I think it's, media portrayals of what sex looks like are so ridiculously different than the actual daily experience. And it builds this fantasy, but also this gold standard that is almost unattainable for so many people. So how do you go about, so you had this idea, and the idea was, let's educate people more on it. Now, where do you go from there? I mean, how did you set out understanding what it is you wanted to educate people on, who the right coaches are, what the educational standards are, all those things?
Yeah, well, I was drawn to technology as a solution because it can make things way more accessible. Because you might live in an area where these professionals just aren't around, first off, or second, you can't afford them. So your phone is always with you. And then also with the coaches, we wanted to look for people that specifically specialize in sex and relationships. So we went after people that have PhDs in human sexuality, are licensed sex therapists, are certified intimacy educators, because a lot of doctors and also some therapists don't actually receive much formal education when it comes to topics like sexual pleasure.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to dig a little bit deeper into the content piece, because I think that's what our listeners are wondering about, So, I mean, Sophie and I can definitely say, I was going to joke about it, but it's not actually a joking matter. Like, in order to bring our sexual worlds together, I mean, it's something we're still actively working on. I'm assuming we'll actively work on until we're done. But, that can actually be a really, really difficult thing. And I can almost guarantee there are people listening right now. Some of them have emailed us in the last week, so I'm thinking of them specifically. They're struggling. They're struggling either because they're in a relationship right now where the sex is incompatible, non-existent, whatever the specific struggle is, or on the flip side, they're single and have been struggling for a long time in terms of finding compatibility, knowing how to approach sex in a new relationships and things of that nature. So are there, let's say, first line kind of big ticket points that you think pretty much everybody needs to know and understand around sexuality, sex, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I would say both of those things you just named start with the ability to talk about these topics very openly and honestly, and that's not easy, right? Because we never really practice that. And so that's why, reading blogs and watching YouTube videos and stuff is a great first step. But that's why we wanted to provide the model we do in Juicebox, because the coaches can be role models and you can actually practice that communication before you have to leave the app and go do it in real life.
That's awesome.
But I think people need to know having these conversations is not weird. I think a lot of people think that sex is like this silent act and that if you say something, you're going to ruin the mood. But people should definitely be talking about what they want to do in bed and what they're enjoying. And I think trying to read your partner's mind or play guessing games leads to a lot of disappointment.
For sure. Yeah, especially when it comes to orgasm or just trying to please the other. And especially in new relationships, I feel like if you can't communicate there, then you're setting the foundation kind of off. Like you're off to a terrible start in the bedroom. And then how do you kind of come back from that? If you're faking orgasms or if you're not communicating what you actually need, then, then you kind of set this precedent.
Yeah, I think, you're touching on the orgasm gap problem, which I don't know if your listeners know, but, straight women are only orgasming, like 65% of women orgasm regularly, where like men, it's above 95%.
Yeah.
And that inequity is just as important as the other gender equality topics that we talk about often. And we have to think about the fact that a lot of women are socialized to be passive and men are supposed to give them their pleasure. And then on the other side, men are taught to pursue and win. And they don't really give women the space to speak up and advocate. And men need to be willing to ask the right questions. So only then would we be able to address these sorts of issues like the orgasm gap.
And how do you handle couples? Like, I'm assuming one person in the coupleship is coming to you.
Yeah.
Probably not both every time. So then do you address the other in terms of like giving them just some things to look at, or do you just kind of handle it with the one side of the partnership?
Yeah, so we often see people, about half of our people are in relationships and half are single. So the folks that are in relationships usually are having differing desire levels, problems, or they're even considering like breaking up or divorce, or they're like trying to understand how to be better lovers. And so in those situations, usually one part of the partnership is not on board, but that doesn't mean that we can't still help the couple through the person that's reaching out.
Sure.
Later, we might expand to offer some sort of like couples feature. Yeah. But right now, a lot of what we do is teach the person that's coming to us, like what vocabulary to use and how to ask the right questions. And then as we even get into like the more physical nature of it, like, well, what are you doing in the bedroom? Why don't you try this instead?
That's great.
It's amazing.
That's really, really great. Yeah, I mean, I know from my experience, with Sophie, it's even as open, like when we enter the relationship, I guess I was the quote unquote more open person sexually and having an easier time talking about it. But then we still, when it came to real intimacy and actually connecting, realized that it was pretty hard for us to talk honestly. It was easier to talk about things in the past than it was to talk about things that were going on in our relationship in the moment. And I know for a lot of other men and actually just people in general that I talk to, Sophie and I will talk to each other or share with each other if one of us masturbated or something along those lines. And that's, for some people, sounds insane. Like, why would you talk to your partner about this? And we find like any other element of our relationship, the more we share with each other, the closer we are and the more connected. I want to know what Sophie's real life experience is, not the experience that she thinks she has to pretend to be having so that I feel better about myself kind of reality, right? And so, I mean, that's really cool that you get all the way down to talking to people about the actual physical act and what it is they're doing, because I mean, people are lost. Where do we learn about this stuff, right? What do you learn from porn, blogs, or your own past experiences? And those are limited and in many aspects magazines, not generalizable and not.
We want to make it personalized because every person's situation is different.
Exactly.
That's really, really cool. How many coaches do you guys have on right now that are on the app?
About 30 in our network.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's great. That's great. And so, like you said, pretty much people can rely on within 24 hours having an answer back. Do they normally correspond with the same coach?
Yeah. So the way it works is you'll download the app. We'll ask a few simple questions about where your satisfaction level is for your sex life, for your dating or relationship life, so that we can customize everything to you. And then you'll be paired with our matching expert, Caitlin, and Caitlin will get a little bit more information about what you want to start chatting with us about first. And then she'll hand select the best coach for your topic. So we have coaches that are more familiar with erectile issues versus coaches that could help you explore kink and BDSM versus coaches that can help you figure out why you're arguing so much with your husband. So we would pair you with the coach, and then you form a long-lasting relationship with that coach. And you can work with your coach for 2 weeks if you want, or 6 months if you want. It's completely flexible to you.
That's so cool.
What would you say is, for relationships, what would you say is the number one thing people are coming to you with, or the most common?
Probably differing desire levels. And then that stems,
quantity.
Yeah, but that also stems from the fact that they're probably not having great sex to begin with, at least on one side, and not having these conversations with their partner at all. So we definitely have slightly more men on the app than
I'm
women.
surprised, actually.
Yeah, I was too, but in retrospect, it makes sense because
it's anonymous.
Well, for two reasons. One, women have stronger social networks, so they're more likely to talk to their friends about these intimate topics, and guys are less likely to talk to their bros about these topics.
Right.
But then secondly, unfortunately, men prioritize sexual pleasure and intimacy in their lives. And so if, for instance, if they're not having an orgasm, then they're like, it's an emergency.
Like, freak it out.
Like they're like going to pay right now. Where like, unfortunately, women, if they don't have an orgasm, they just think that's what their fate.
Yeah.
And, that's a huge problem. So we need to help women realize that should be a priority for them too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting.
And for the orgasm conversation, are you guiding them to change up things in the partnership of sex, or are you helping them with like self-stimulation or vibrators, or you just, there's all different routes you can take?
All of that.
Yeah.
So we definitely, we can help you recommend which toys to buy, which lube to buy. If you're a woman and you haven't ever masturbated, we can go over that, explore why you have shame around that, how to do it, exactly how to touch. We have like these guides that we supplement the coaching with like images and of anatomy and showing you exactly how to move your fingers at what speed. We try to give extremely tangible advice.
That's awesome.
Just saying, oh, go masturbate. Because a lot of women are like, well, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah.
But also it's not just that. We try to help people and open their minds when it comes to these topics. Like, how do you define sex? Do you think sex is always penis and vagina? Because that does not have to be what's on the menu every night. Very few women can actually orgasm that way. Mm-hmm. So we try to initiate those conversations.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that about 60% of women need clitoral stimulation in addition to penetration to be able to orgasm. I don't know if that's the right number.
It's most people. I've seen everywhere from 80 to 60%.
Okay. So I was even on the low end when I was describing it. Yeah, I mean, what I think, when you were talking about the women masturbation, I almost feel like it would be useful for men to have guides to understand how to stimulate women. Because again, I mean, I talk about this on our podcast. I've talked about it before, and I've talked about it in articles, etc. But like, I learned about sex from porn, and porn is not women centric. Porn is not teaching men how to pleasure women. It's catering. Intimate. I don't even know if it's honestly at this point, I don't even know if it's catering to the male fantasy or if it's created an entire genre of male fantasy. It's not even clear to me which one of those two is right. But what it does for sure is pretend as if that penetration act or just very specific subset of acts done in a very specific kind of way are the gold standard for sex. And there's no nuance in terms of what the man should do so that a woman enjoys themselves, because, you know, all women enjoy themselves immensely in porn and are always having the best time ever.
Right.
So I think for a lot of men, it could even be helpful to have real tangible guidance in terms of what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's been really exciting actually for me to see so many male clients come in that are wanting to become better lovers.
I love
because
that.
I think that's a story we don't hear very often. We always hear about, you know, men being jerks or men coming and falling asleep. And it is nice to see those men, at least, you know, maybe they don't have all the answers yet, but they're trying.
Yeah. No, I mean, men worry about, the obvious, like penis size and all the stuff that we all know men worry about. But I don't know. It would be really interesting actually to do almost like a study in terms of the percentage of men who have kind of accepted the whatever level of sex they're having right now as just their standard, their best case scenario, and just don't believe that it's really in their power to rise above that or improve their sex life. I imagine there's a lot of men that fall into that category.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people need to understand that sex is like an integral part of your overall health and well-being. And there's actually, you know, some studies that have come out that the health of our personal relationships is actually more important for our long-lasting health than like obesity or exercise or nutrition. And so this is definitely somewhere where people should be spending time and resources. And just because, you know, you have pretty good sex doesn't mean it can't be better. I mean, people hire personal trainers all the time to get a bit more fit. And you can do the same thing with your love life.
I was going to say that earlier when Adi said, yeah, and we'll just keep working until it's done. I was like, it's never done.
I said, we're done.
Until we're done with life. With life.
Like, until we die.
Until we die. Okay. I thought he meant like, till we're done.
First of all, you already know I'm breaking up with you at 75.
I know. Is it 75? I thought it was 85.
Oh, is it 85?
Yeah.
We're not really quite clear.
Is it my 75 or your 80? Or yours?
There you go. You're 75, my 85. We're done. Then we're done.
All right, great.
And then I'm going back to play the field. So, you know, maybe I need to join the app now so I can prep.
Get your move.
No, I didn't mean until our work is done. Yeah, I mean, look, also your sexual preference, your sexual wants, your sexual needs change with time.
Exactly. I bet you have different levels. Like, do you see it show up if people stick with you? Like,
oh yeah, I love seeing that.
Yeah.
Like the evolution. Like for instance, like one client comes to mind who he's married and he came to us with issues related to like lasting longer and maintaining his erection for a longer amount of time. And so we were definitely able to address those concerns and give exercises related to that. But later in the conversation, they were able to figure out that he had never asked his wife what she enjoyed in bed. And those conversations had never occurred. And then it was great to see over the course of a few months, not only were his erectile issues addressed, but also he was just having a better overall sex life with his wife.
Wow. That's so great.
Totally. We did that in a couples workshop. We asked our couples to turn to their partner and talk about one thing they enjoy about sex, especially. One couple out of, I think, 8 had ever done that in their relationship before.
Wow.
And they were mostly married, weren't they?
Yeah, they were almost all married. Almost 12% had ever done that before. It was mind-boggling.
Yeah, people really struggle with this.
Yeah, they really, really do. Cool. So before we have 5 questions we ask everybody, but I have a question I'm interested in. What's the least expected, most surprising tip or strategy that you just found out while you're creating this app, or while you had the state sponsored sort of organization back home, that you learned, you were like, really, this is a thing? Did that ever happen?
Yeah, I think my experience when I first started working in the field in Tennessee, I never had access to hardly any of this expertise, and having access to these coaches really changed my life. But I think something that I have become, like, I try to evangelize a little bit, is that men have prostates, and prostate play is something that I don't think a lot of people talk about, and men's orgasms can be so much better if they could just like open their minds up a little bit to this idea that, you're not going to, don't have homophobia about a particular act.
And kind of like anal penetration for men.
Exactly.
In the context of heterosexual sex play.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think if men were more open to penetration, I think the level of empathy you would have for women's vulnerability and sex would just be like so much better, and the world would be a better place.
Yeah, it's true.
Can you put that on a bumper sticker, and we'll
vulnerability equals.
If men were more equal to penetration, the world would be a better place.
Yep, exactly.
Wow. Okay. I think we can go into our questions on that.
Yeah.
So again, there are 5 questions we ask everybody who comes on the podcast. We'll start with the first one. What's the best advice you've ever received? You guys aren't watching this on video or listening right now, but Brianna's stumped for a second.
The best advice, I guess, I can't think of like the single best advice I've ever received, but some advice that I've received that I still try to think about every day is to never think that you're really, this is going to sound so cheesy.
It's all good. The best ones are
just something my grandparents used to say to me all the time, and I just always think about it, is that no matter what school you go to or what job you have or how far you go in life, like you're never ever ever better than another person. And I think my grandparents being from a more low income, like rural background, I think I'm always reminded of that.
That's beautiful.
Cool. Just for the last minute here, I think there's some noise in the background. I don't know if it's on our end or your end, but
oh, sorry. Someone's like moving around boxes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Just while we're getting these last questions. What has been your proudest moment to date?
I think my proudest moment is launching Juicebox, because it's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
I mean, accomplishing school and grad school and all of that is great, but like, it's like the path is drawn for you, right? It's like, okay, take this test, do this task, and you do it. When you're launching a company or building a product, there's no very straight road to that. And so I've had to figure that out all on my own. And I'm pretty proud of that.
That's awesome. We can totally relate.
Yes. What has been your most difficult moment to date?
I think my most difficult moment relates to fundraising for Juicebox. It's like, of all venture capital and angel investment funds, only about 2% of it goes to companies founded by women. And then if you add on the fact that I'm in this like space that seems very shameful to be in, and like as a young woman in a room of just like male investors talking about sexual pleasure, like it's extremely difficult to navigate that.
Wow.
Yeah. Was there a specific, you don't even have to tell us about it, but it sounds like there was a specific almost meeting or day or kind of set of meetings that really brought it front and center how difficult that is.
Yeah, I've had so many meetings, and just hearing no so many times. Eventually I got some yeses, but I think especially like one moment an investor told me that my like physical presentation did not match the sex appeal that was needed for my product.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And like he had no problem saying that, just like said it like it was totally okay.
Like you don't look like who I would want to invest in for this.
Yeah, it's like he wanted like a sexy, like Victoria's
Cosmopolitan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cosmo front of the magazine.
Yeah, right.
Sick. So sick.
Yeah. I mean, it is that world is driven by men. So you get what men do, right?
And
then self-care.
Oh yeah.
Most of the people that we talk to they've developed a way to take care of themselves, especially the entrepreneurs we talk to, in order to be able to make it through all these things. And our listeners really love picking up tips, etc. What is your self-care ritual? How do you take care of yourself?
I love movies.
Okay.
So I
go to the movies, or
I go see a movie like every week.
Nice.
In theaters, because it's like escaping completely from my reality, and I like to just, it's not the same watching a movie at home, like actually going to the theater.
Totally.
Agreed.
What's the last movie you saw?
I saw Hearts Beat Loud.
How was it?
It was really amazing. I recommend it. Yeah.
All right. Hearts Beat Loud.
Last but not least, what does it mean for you to be ignited?
And what makes you ignited?
What makes you ignited?
I think having a passion for what you work in, or at least if you are unable, I mean, sometimes it sounds like to say that from a place of privilege, because not everyone can have their financial work be what they're passionate about, but at least having some sort of hobby or job that you feel so passionate about that, you just want to try to do it every day or multiple times a week. And I think when you engage in that type of work or activity, you do feel ignited.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean,
beautiful.
We agree. It's why we do this. Cool. So our listeners are going to get a code, and that code sounds like it'll be ignited, but we'll put it in the show notes to make sure. So they'll get some free coaching from you all, which is awesome. I think we'll take advantage of that code as well. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for all the work, because it sounds like, and I imagine that it's been a lot of effort to bring it to this point. So thank you for getting all that done on a topic that is this taboo and controversial. I'm imagining you're saving a lot of marriages and relationships and making people's lives better and happier. And thank you so much for showing up on our podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Have a great rest of your week. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited Podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.